Welcome to Journals of the Whilling from the Tumbling Saber team, a member of the Star Wars Commonwealth Podcast Network. Take your first step into a larger world by checking out the network on the web at starwarscommonwealth.com, on Facebook, iTunes, and Twitter. Everyone, welcome back to Journals of the Whilling. It's been a while, we've missed you, but here we are, we're back once again in the saddle, and this week we are talking about Ahsoka, and some of the assorted news that has come out on the Star Wars literature front. And here with me, once again, back from a vacation in Florida, all tanned up, ready to go, it's Steve. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Not as tan as I would like, but you got some color. Sorry again about last week. That seems to happen to me a lot. I always get sick right when I get back from a vacation.
You and me both. That has happened. That happened to me on my honeymoon. That was evil. And I dude, no need to apologize. I remember right before Christmas, we were about to record an episode of Tumbling Saber, and just out of the blue, like a bolt of lightning, I just got absolutely horrifically nauseous. I thought it would pass. It did not. And I had to pull the chute. And that's how the Christmas episode that Corey and James did on the fly. That's how that was born.
Right, so something great came out of it.
Yeah, and we've decided that we're going to hopefully, knock on wood, hopefully do something pretty cool for Christmas this year that we're going to start actually prepping for months in advance so that we can actually have time to plan it out, execute, put it all together, and do something really interesting with that.
Right, you got to kind of set the seeds early for it.
Yeah, because I know us, and I know that if we don't plan it and we don't do it early, we probably won't do it.
All right, you say it now, put it out into the universe, and it's there. It'll happen.
Yeah, we've committed to it, so now we have to do it. Otherwise, people will hold us accountable. No, they won't. So everything's good? Your trip to Florida was good? Everything's relaxing, and weather was perfect, I hear.
Oh, it was beautiful. And you know what, because we've been to Florida like a number of times now together. So we try to do stuff that's like a little different that we haven't done before. So we stayed in Boca, but there's a lot of stuff to do in Delray, which is like the next town or two towns over. And we just kind of like went online to see what was there. And really cool, there's this place called the Silver Ball Pinball Museum. And we did that for a day. It's called a museum, but it's really an arcade. They have pinball machines from like the 70s, 80s, 90s.
Oh, I miss arcades so much.
So cool. Like old school, like baseball themed ones. Dan found an Indiana Jones one. No Star Wars pinball, unfortunately.
What?
I know. I'm surprised. There was a Star Trek one, go figure, but no Star Wars. But I'm sure there's one that exists. Has to.
Oh, there has to. Yeah, for sure. There's some vintage Star Wars games out there.
Yeah, we did some digging. There's a second location, and luckily, it's in New York City, so which is great for us. So we'll probably take the train down and scope it out.
Yeah, I mean, I used to have a bunch of arcades not too far from me. And there was one at this shopping center. I can barely call it that. My parents used to like to do their grocery shopping there. And my brother and I would just take off. And they would give us a few bucks each. And we would be fine for 90 minutes. That arcade's long gone. Every other arcade is just long gone. I miss them so much.
I know. Well, now the cool thing is a lot of bars adapt. Like we have this place called Barcade in New York. And there's a few locations. 2 in the city. 1 in Williamsburg, in Brooklyn, like the very hipstery area. And it's cool. It's just like all like salvaged arcade games, but there's a bar and a kitchen. And it's literally that was my casino growing up, was the arcade.
Yeah, you and me both, man.
I used to go to Nathan's hot dogs. They used to have an arcade attached to it. The one I don't know if they all do, but the one near me did. And I would just go and get tickets and it was so much fun.
Well, you had me at Nathan's. I'm just thinking of hot dogs now.
Well,
Dirty, disgusting hot dogs, but man, I love them so much.
Have you ever been to the original in Coney Island?
I've never been to New York, period. I've flown
Period.
above it, and I've seen the Statue of Liberty from afar and all that stuff. But no, I landed at, I think, JFK Airport and never really left.
You got to make it out to Coney Island one day. It's so awesome. In the summers they do like free concerts. I remember one year I went with my friends. We saw Joan Jett for free, and we had good seats. And at her age, she's rocking.
Oh, she still goes hard.
Oh man, I saw her twice actually. Once at Coney Island and once at actually Hofstra, my undergrad. Because they do like spring concerts, and sometimes they get big people to show up. And so I think she toured there with like Taking Back Sunday and some other groups. It was so cool. She's
but we get a lot of acts here in the summer. We have Montreal in the summertime is just jam packed with festivals, and a lot of them free.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool. All right, let's jump into some Star Wars news here. That's what the people are paying for. So we got news of a book coming out later this year called Inferno Squad. And it's going to tell the story of just after Rogue One, how the embarrassed Empire is really ticked off, and they want to sack the rest of Saw Gerrera's gang wherever they may be. So we get a elite group of troopers, I suppose this is, that infiltrate Saw Gerrera's gang and tear it apart from the inside. At first glance, is this a book that you're interested in?
Well, one, on title alone, that's probably one of the most badass titles that they've had in recent. I love it. I don't know. Do you think it's too cheesy? I think it's awesome.
I think it's fine. Yeah, it's a pretty... I find it very, very video game-ish, but I'm down with the title. No problem with that.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, I think... I definitely want to check this one out. I love how they're keeping Saw Gerrera pretty relevant. It seems like they've really elevated the character, and they want to tie him really closely to that era.
Yeah, I mean, he's our doorway to the early seeds of the rebellion. It seems like he's the guy that held all these violent cells together before they were sort of maybe civilized and brought into the rebellion proper. But yeah, no surprise that him and his faction continue to have stories told about them. It's a pretty bankable theme, I think. What I find interesting is that we're going to get another book similar to Lost Stars, where we're going to get a dose of life from the Imperial side of things. And maybe we're going to get challenged in our line of thinking about the rebellion. And maybe we'll see them, i.e. the rebellion, as somewhat of as a group of terrorists. I wonder if Christy Golden, the author of this Inferno Squad, will try and take that tack and make us sympathize with the rebellion a bit more.
That seems to be the theme now, humanizing the Empire a bit. Because a lot of these soldiers were just, I mean, that's all they knew. They grew up, and if you didn't want to do what, kind of like Luke, if you didn't want to be a moisture farmer, his friends were off joining the Empire. So a lot of these people were just, you have to imagine, they're just kids who needed a future, needed something to do.
The Empire was
people.
Ubiquitous, right? It was.
Yeah.
That's just what you did. You joined up with the military.
Right. I mean, we as fans, we know better. You look at the heads up of the Empire, the Emperor and Vader, but kind of the lower ranks, they're just kind of doing, what they think is expected of them.
Yep. So an interesting story on the horizon there. That's coming out mid-July. That'll be our summertime tide over.
Mm-hmm. Something interesting, though, I think, with the timeline, though, because that's going to take place right after Rogue One. So, we're kind of, is the whole book going to parallel A New Hope? Is it kind of is it going to be like a companion to it? We're following our heroes, but now we're going to get a little more on the inner workings of Episode 4 on the Empire side.
Yeah, like I imagine that this group will hear about the destruction of the Death Star in this book, and well, now what do we do? That kind of thing.
I mean, what would be cool though if they end up at the Battle of Yavin by the end of the book, and maybe that's how this squad is taken out. Possibly, that's a theory I'm putting out there.
Yeah, or thinking ahead, maybe they're part of the group that tries to or does successfully push the rebels out of their base on Yavin.
Mm.
We've never seen that.
Right. Kind of on the ground like that.
Yeah, although I mean, it seems pretty clear that this book is going to be focused on trashing what's left of Saw's groups. And I don't know if that much applies to whether it's General Dodonna's group or Sato's group or whoever else has their own is in charge of their own cell of the rebellion. It sounds like this will be self-contained to Saw's group of extremists.
Right, and it makes you wonder how many people Saw had if they weren't all destroyed on. Totally blanking on the planet right now.
Jeddah.
On Jeddah. So if that wasn't all of his group, I mean, how far-reaching was his cell? So, I mean, did they make that clear? Is that just something I missed?
No, I don't know how many people are part of his group. And I don't know. I mean, I think maybe Bloodline maybe touched on it, that he does have tentacles elsewhere throughout the galaxy.
I see what you did there. Tentacles, the Borgula.
Yeah, it's hard to say, but yeah, I mean, obviously they've spread this guy's extremist groups throughout the galaxy, and who knows how long we're going to get stories about this guy's group. But interesting stuff. I'm looking forward to it. But I got to be honest, I'm more interested in what's coming out later this year, and that is the making of Rogue One. And that's coming in October. This has me interested because I love the making of books. I love getting behind the scenes and seeing what goes into these movies. And I just really wonder if they're going to touch on the massive amount of reshoots that they did.
Right. I mean, how tight-lipped is Lucasfilm going to be about that? You know?
Yeah, they're just going to polish the apple and just say everything was great from front to back, and the reshoots were totally normal, which in a way they are. But it sounds like Rogue One had a little bit of drama going on with it and needed a lot of jackhammering.
Right.
I wonder if they're going to touch on that.
And it makes you think about the politics of Lucasfilm and the inner workings. And I don't know. I mean, I think that's something we're all interested in hearing, whether they're going to let us into that little bubble of information.
Yeah, I mean, is this a warts and all type story, or is this just the prettied up version?
Right.
I mean, that's secondary, really, for me. Like, I'd like to know the quote unquote truth, but I am mostly interested in how this movie got made. So that comes out early October, right in the meaty area where we just start getting really, really panicky about episode 8, and we're just going to be at our wits' end waiting for. I imagine that by that point we'll be waiting for the main trailer. And just counting the days by that point, it'll be about 70 or so days.
I mean, at that point, leading up to The Force Awakens, I mean, we had, I think the final trailer came out around that time for Force Awakens. Because we had like 2, I think, prior to that. And then...
Yeah, there was a teaser in October of 2014, if I'm not mistaken. And then another one in the spring. And then I think we had the final trailer. Was it the World Series that they did it? They attached it to, or it was some big event. I just can't remember what it was. Maybe Thanksgiving or Black Friday.
Thanksgiving might have been
or Cyber Monday, something in that area. It was about a month out, I think. Anyway, The Force Awakens is ancient history now. It's all about the Ahsoka novel. We'll get there in just a couple minutes. Last thing, have you picked up Empire's End yet, or you're still working on the earlier editions of Aftermath?
I am still working on Life Debt. Probably. So I'm probably gonna stick to the audiobooks. Although I have the physical copies, I forgot I pre-ordered the physical copy of Empire's End, and it came. I was like, do I really want to return it? I kind of want it on my shelf, even though I'm going to listen to the audiobook.
I've
So
heard great things about the audiobook.
yeah, I mean, the first Aftermath one was great. Life Debt, good quality. Um, are you talking about Empire's End in particular? Was that
Yeah,
like
I mean, I've heard a clip of Empire's End audiobook, and nothing from the first two. But I have heard on top of that great things about the production of Empire's End.
Oh, that's good. I mean, I'm going to assume if it's the Battle of Jakku, they're going to put a lot into it. So that would, yeah, that kind of makes me want to listen to the audiobook a little more, just to kind of hear that production of the battle, and just hear those familiar sounds of the TIEs and the X-wings, and I think that'll be phenomenal.
Yeah, and I'm about a quarter of the way through the book now, and it's really good. It's if you're struggling with parts 1 or 2, I think those struggles will be gone by the time you get to Empire's End. It moves pretty quick. It's all pretty tense and action packed, and consequential. Maybe is not maybe not quite the right word, but decisive maybe is a better word. Like things move, and it's pretty convincing. So I'm anxious to keep pounding away at that book and finishing it up and discussing it with you here.
Yeah, and we're going to do all 3, right? That's the plan moving forward. We're going to talk about it as a trilogy as a whole, right?
Yeah, I think, well, because the first 2 are getting a bit older now, we'll zip through those and just talk about the setup, and then we'll dive a bit deeper on Empire's End, because frankly, I think that's the part that everybody's most looking forward to, and to see how that kind of links up with the sequel trilogy.
Oh yeah, for sure.
All right, so with that said, we can now sit back and talk about our favorite Togrutan and her debut novel in the young readers, or I guess young adult range.
Yeah, YA, right?
Yeah, so E.K. Johnston wrote this one, and she did a great job. And I guess a very broad stroke outline of the plot finds Ahsoka post Order 66. She's bouncing around the galaxy, trying to stay out of trouble, stay quiet and hidden, while the Empire kind of wraps its iron fist around the galaxy. She's going by the name of Ashla, a name or a word that we've all become familiar with over the last couple of years. And of course, Ahsoka being Ahsoka, she gets pulled into a conflict versus the Empire, and she can't turn her back on this group of defenseless farmers, disgruntled defenseless farmers who are victims of the Empire's oppression as they roll in and kind of ransack their planet and start using it up for all it's worth. And so Ahsoka, using her military background, her force training, she starts leading these people in a very subversive attempt to push the Empire off the planet of Raeda. And eventually, Senator Bail Organa takes notice. Him and Ahsoka get together, and away we go with the Fulcrum program and the Seedlings of Rebellion. Does that about cover it? In a very, very broad stroke?
And yeah, I think you nailed it.
So let's backtrack to, was it last year, sometime early last year, or maybe it was even late in 2015 when we heard the news that this book was actually going to come out. I nearly fell out of my chair. Not that it was unexpected that we were going to start getting Ahsoka material, but when the news finally did drop, I was so excited.
Yeah, I mean, you had seen all of Clone Wars by that point, right?
Yeah, and Ahsoka, I mean, today as we record is, I think, the 4-year anniversary, or maybe even the 5-year anniversary, 4-year, that Ahsoka left the Jedi Order. This was the date 4 years ago that the final episode of season 5 aired, where Ahsoka leaves the Jedi Order. And so that's it was a good couple of years between getting any new Ahsoka stuff.
Right. I mean, until she showed up again in Rebels, right? Which was with the end of season 1, right?
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, so I mean, I was so happy to be getting this novel. Ahsoka, over the course of the Clone Wars cartoon, started as this annoying little brat who quickly became one of the better parts of the show. And by the time she left it, and by the time, especially by the time she showed up again in Rebels, she had become one of my favorite characters in all of Star Wars. Period. Never mind just the movies. Like she's a top 5, maybe even top 3 character for me.
Wow, that's big.
Yeah, I love Ahsoka to death. All right, so the novel starts. It's about a year after Order 66. And I was hoping that it would be set a little closer to Order 66 itself, but we did get that little interlude at the beginning, or a little prelude at the beginning, that we heard so much about from Dave Filoni and his crew, about the plans for some unfinished Clone Wars episodes, the Siege of Mandalore specifically, where Obi-Wan and Anakin give Ahsoka, Rex, and a battalion of clones to go retake Mandalore from Maul, who of course in Clone Wars had taken over. And so we see a brief snippet of that, where Ahsoka and Rex save each other, but Maul escapes. And this taking place just prior to Order 66. And I thought that was really, really cool to see that briefly given some limelight here.
Yeah, and it really, what I like about it too is, because we're getting so much of Maul in Rebels, that it is really adding more meat to their stories. And it's doing a good job at kind of bringing the two together.
Right, because in that Rebels season 2 finale, we see Maul and Ahsoka speak to one another as if there's history. Because I don't know if they met in the actual Clone Wars cartoon. If they did, it was really brief. But in Rebels, they talk to each other as if they have a history together. Maul calls her Lady Tano, and he insinuates that she was a quitter, or a half Jedi, or a part-time Jedi, I think he said. And so yeah, definitely alluding to a history between the two. And here in the Ahsoka novel, we do get another brief glimpse of that history, where Ahsoka, a young Ahsoka, goes toe-to-toe with Darth Maul and traps him momentarily anyway. And then from there, the story moves ahead, and Ahsoka and Rex, upon learning of what's happened, they both fake their deaths. I think, if I'm not mistaken, they kind of dig tombs for themselves, or burial plots for themselves.
Right.
Ahsoka buries her lightsabers, and I forget whose bodies they put there. I think for Rex they put a clone. So
I think so.
Of course, yeah. It would be indistinguishable. And I don't know if they put some other body there in place of Ahsoka's, but she buries her lightsabers there to make it clear that, or at least to give the impression that she's dead. And from there she fades away and takes on the mantle of Ashla and decides to just stay out of trouble. And then moving on from there, we get fed sort of Ahsoka's feelings of isolation and loneliness in the galaxy. She's got nobody. She stretches out through the Force searching for Anakin and can't feel him. She used to just know his presence intuitively, but it was gone. So she assumed that he was dead. And that's also our cue to know that Anakin's, I guess, ripple effect or presence in the Force is completely different from that of Darth Vader's. So truly, at that point, Anakin Skywalker was no more.
Right, because I think this is the first time they've ever referenced that, his change to Darth Vader made that kind of effect. That he really did become a different person. I don't know if they've ever put it in that way before.
Yeah, this was just hitting you over the head with it, that Anakin is gone. That person is absolutely gone. Yoda kind of mentions it pretty bluntly in Revenge of the Sith, but this just drives it home that his signature in the Force is eradicated, and it's all. Now, did she feel? Was she? I can't remember now. Did she feel some sort of dark presence in the Force that she couldn't quite make out? I can't remember that anymore. I mean, I don't want to mislead our listeners here.
Right. I can't think of a particular quote.
So we do know that she's heard of Darth Vader. She's heard the name, but she, at this point, nobody knows anything about Darth Vader really. She's heard that he's this force wielding thug that the Emperor keeps around, but she's got no indication at this point that Anakin and Darth Vader are the same person.
Right. I mean, that revelation doesn't happen until Rebels.
Exactly. That's the first time we get confirmation that Ahsoka believed Anakin to be dead. But it's funny that she wasn't able to feel Anakin through the Force in the novel here, but she felt him in Rebels. Or she felt something a little more familiar.
Maybe it had to be with was she in the room with him when it was confirmed, or was it just, does he have to be like in the vicinity? I can't remember. If I'm trying to think back to Rebels when she first felt that. She
was on board the Ghost, and Vader was in his TIE fighter.
Right, but they were right there.
Yeah, they were a lot closer to one another. So yeah, maybe proximity has something to do with it. So we'll move ahead. Ahsoka trains a bunch of farmers. Before backtrack a little bit here, she stays with this group of people, and once she feels like she's, I don't know if she feels like she's getting too close to them, or that trouble is sort of closing in around her, she takes off and moves on to her next location so that she doesn't get caught and doesn't bring any more misery to anybody else.
I think it's a mix of the two. I think she's afraid of the Empire catching up to her. And then, I mean, after suffering, the loss after Order 66, after leaving the Jedi Order, I could imagine, someone in her position would be afraid to get close to people again.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. At the same time, though, you could tell that she's kind of looking for a place to belong, but she can.
Yeah.
She is what she is. She's not a Jedi, but she's probably. I'd like to think that Ahsoka's better than a Jedi because she's just like pure good. So she can't hide from what she is. She's a good person, a highly trained, highly skilled person that just wants to help. So it was inevitable that she's going to get pulled into some sort of conflict. And sure enough, that happens on Small Moon of Raeda, which is really to me sounds like a place where only very basic stuff goes on, mostly farming. And soon enough, the Empire moves in to ruffle up her plans. She seemed to be sort of settling in nicely as a mechanic on Raeda, and fixing people's farm equipment. And then, of course, like I said, the Empire moves in and starts exploiting the land, making the farmers work twice as long, taking all their food, and just turning their planet into a barren place really quickly. So, of course, the farmers want to revolt, and they have no skills, they have no leader, until, of course, Ahsoka, decides reluctantly that she's going to have to be the one to do this for these people.
Yeah, I mean, I like, just how much of a natural leader she is. And I just thought, E.K. Johnston, right? That's the author?
E.K. Johnston, correct.
Johnston, yeah. I thought she just did a really good job at, making her, her skills as a mechanic relevant. And she really highlighted her personality and her skills, and she really is a natural leader, and I thought that was great to see.
Yeah, and we're not that far removed from the Ahsoka that we know. This is 1 year after she essentially, or maybe a couple years after she walks away from the Jedi Order. So she's still a very young person. She might be 17, 18 years old at this point, but clearly a very, very skilled leader, as we came to know. I mean, she was part of the team that helped train Saw Gerrera,
right,
and his group on Onderon. So she's got the chops. She's got what it takes to get these people in a row and ready to take on the Empire. And they do. They in very subversive ways, they kind of delay the growth of their crops just to piss off the Empire. She pulls off a couple rescue missions as some of the farmers that she had grown close to were captured. And all of this, we should say, without her lightsabers. I think if fans were... I've heard mostly good stuff about this book, but I don't think I would blame anybody who felt like they didn't get enough Ahsoka action. And she's really sneaking around using her wits and her physical abilities more than anything. She doesn't use the Force very much, and she definitely doesn't use lightsabers because, lo and behold, she does not have any.
Right. I mean, it kind of makes you think a little bit more of like what makes a Jedi, and that being a Jedi is much more than, wielding the lightsaber. It's those skills that she's able to hone in on. That, like you said, makes her maybe, more than a Jedi. She's able to use these other skills and techniques and talents of hers to get things done.
Absolutely. And it's funny that all this, we're learning about what makes a Jedi great from somebody who's not a Jedi or who doesn't consider herself to be a Jedi.
Yeah.
So once there's an incident on Raeda where it becomes clear to the Empire that these farmers are getting help, and not just regular help, but they're getting help from a Jedi. And it's at this point we are introduced to another Inquisitor. So anybody who watches Rebels is very familiar with the group of Inquisitors. We'd seen the Grand Inquisitor,
Seventh Sister,
Fifth Brother, and I think we met also the Eighth Brother in the season 2 finale.
I can't remember exactly.
the first person that we saw using the helicopter lightsaber thing.
Okay.
I want to say that was the eighth brother. But now in this one we meet the sixth brother, who is kind of put on the trail. He was on a previous task, but he was redirected to head to Raeda and hunt down and destroy this Jedi. And by this point, Ahsoka feels the noose kind of closing in around her. So reluctantly, she decides she's got to leave Raeda and abandon this group of farmers and leave them to their own devices, at least for a little while. And so she takes off, and of course, Ahsoka being Ahsoka, she keeps helping other people throughout the galaxy. And I think we'll come back to that in a second. But the Inquisitor, the sixth brother, shows up and tracks down the group of farmers that she'd been helping. And he starts more or less killing them and torturing them and capturing them. And this draws Ahsoka back to the planet. And I mean, towards the end of the book, where there's another raid on the Imperial installation there, and it all comes down to a battle between a still lightsaberless Ahsoka and, of course, the Inquisitor. And I don't know, maybe if E.K. Johnston isn't well versed in writing action sequences, or if this was purely intentional to show that Ahsoka still got it. But this was a very underwhelming climax as far as battles go. I mean, what did you think? Did you think that battle just went down the toilet really quickly?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Johnston's main focus in the novel was the action, which for a lot of Star Wars fans and readers, might be a bit of a disappointment for. Um, but yeah, no, I kind of agree. It really wasn't a thrilling battle. Uh, like you said, I don't know if that was her strongest suit, and that might be maybe my one um negative point in the book.
Yeah, yeah. I don't want to say it was negative because I still think it was well written, and I think I get the point that Ahsoka can deal with these people unarmed, even if they have a double-sided lightsaber. Um, but yeah, I was expecting some fireworks there, and we just didn't get them. Like the fight just suddenly ended. The Inquisitor's lightsabers kind of they exploded virtually in his hands, and it killed him. I was like, oh, well, that sucked. um, yeah. So goodbye, sixth brother, right? Um, and then of course Ahsoka goes on the run again, leaving her friends behind, who are at that point are free, I suppose, of imperial oppression. Like they had successfully driven the Empire off. Like, did the Empire decide to bug out of that planet, or were they just temporarily disrupted?
I don't remember if it was explicitly said, but I think they just bugged out.
It sounds like it. I think they decided, you know what, this planet's not worth the trouble. The crops aren't growing. Let's just get out of here. So they definitely succeeded in pushing the Empire out, I think. But this all kind of leads me to the whole plot line about kyber crystals. And one of these things in the new canon that has kind of bent my brain a little bit. I'm not quite sure what they're doing with kyber crystals. It seems like there's a little bit of conflicting info going on, or maybe we just don't have enough info yet. But we've learned that Sith in old legends used to make synthetic kyber crystals. That's a thing of the past. That is no longer canon. What Sith or Inquisitors would do is take kyber crystals that belong to Jedi and put them through the crystals through a process called bleeding, which would be what turns them red. So what we learn is that kyber crystals are kind of like these semi-sentient things that almost have a consciousness of their own and a will of their own. What did you get out of kyber crystals in this book?
I mean, very much like what you were saying. And it kind of makes you wonder, between Rogue One, Catalyst, and Ahsoka, we are kind of getting this very mythical look at the kyber crystal. And I wouldn't put it quite on the level of midi-chlorians, but they are figuring out a way to explain them.
Yeah. I've referred to kyber crystals as the new midi-chlorians as a way of explaining certain aspects of the Force to us.
But it kind of works in a way. I don't know.
Well, it works because they haven't distilled it down to a science, and they've kept it still very mysterious and mystical. Right. Like there's nothing very concrete about these things yet.
And I think that's what it is. I mean, unless they explore it, when they start going back, in the past, if they do that, it would be interesting to see how earlier Jedi, would come about these kyber crystals. And so, I mean, I'm very much interested in seeing that. How does it play into the early religion?
Yeah, that I'm sure at some point we're going to get there. But in this book, I think we got a pretty good glimpse of how Jedi and crystals interact, in that each crystal sort of has its own song that calls out to its eventual owner. And Ahsoka makes a trip to the planet Ilum, which we saw in the Clone Wars. Remember that episode where she and Yoda take a bunch of younglings to go through their trials to get their own kyber crystal. And she shows up on Ilum, and she's kind of horrified to see that the Empire has, again, destroyed another planet and strip-mined it of all kyber crystals. So Ahsoka's in orbit in her ship, and she thought that's, she'd been hearing a lightsaber, a kyber crystal song calling to her. This being after she's decided she needs her own lightsabers again if she's going to fight. And she realizes, no, these lightsabers, these crystals aren't on Ilum. So she refocuses her senses and realizes, no, they're coming from Raeda. I was just there. And this is what leads her back to Raeda and into the eventual battle with the Inquisitor. And so she takes it's the six brothers' crystals that she ends up taking for herself. And when she takes them back in this neat scene, she puts together her own piecemeal lightsabers, and when she first ignites them in a very symbolic way, the blades are white, not blue or green like we're used to seeing Jedi, but a neutral white that symbolizes her status as a non-Jedi.
I mean, it's pretty powerful when you think about it, like, as a character, and we've been touching on this kind of, throughout the conversation, but, that transcending the Jedi Order, not tied to, a particular doctrine, but more of a higher, almost a purer, white, the color white, in literature or movies, it's always to signify purity, or like something transcendent. So, it's very interesting that they decided to give Ahsoka the color white, very contrasting to the red of the Sith lightsaber.
Yeah, and I mean, if there's anybody in Star Wars lore that you could almost consider to be perfect and pure, you gotta consider Ahsoka to be the front runner in that conversation.
Now, is Ahsoka? Now, what's interesting, I know we don't really know what's behind, and for Lucasfilm, is it going to be unique only to her, or is this something to aspire to? Is this something that future Jedi or Force sensitive people, will eventually everyone have a white lightsaber? Is this something that we're going to see Rey, for example, wield?
That's a very interesting question. I hadn't even considered that. But it certainly is something to think about. Will other people have a white lightsaber at some point?
So, I don't know. It's very interesting, but it really does, harken to the kind of person that Ahsoka is. And I really think Johnson did a great job at just getting us into, her mind and who she is. So, even though the book may not have been action packed, it really served as a really good, character drama for Ahsoka.
Well, yeah, and once I got done with the book and I thought about it and I said, yeah, this was a good book, but it didn't scratch the action itch that I was hoping to get. And I don't know if that's my fault for having my expectations out of whack, but then I thought to myself, you know what? This book is perfectly set up for sequel Ahsoka novels. This was a reintroduction to the character, a little bit of a deeper dive to the character, and where we leave her, it's a perfect place to leave her, to set us up for future stories. And the story kind of ends with her meeting up with Bail Organa and deciding, they hadn't met for the first time. I think they met briefly in the Clone Wars. And they meet earlier in the book where they kind of keep secrets from one another, which was fascinating. I love the scenes between, probably my favorite part of the book actually, was the scenes between Bail and Ahsoka, in which you knew that Bail was hanging on to the information about Obi-Wan, and he wanted to tell her, but for the sake of Obi-Wan and Luke's safety, he kept it to himself. And you just wonder, is that the right call? I don't know. He can't tell her. At least not at this point. Did she have a secret of her own? I feel like she did, and I didn't write it down.
I'm trying to. It'll probably come to us, but I don't remember actually.
I mean, anyway, they decide that they're going to work together, and that Ahsoka she can't really be out in front leading the charge against the Empire. They're not ready for that yet. The rebellion is just not ready to get there yet. But what they do need is an intelligence network, a way to communicate with each other and do some recruiting. So Ahsoka becomes the first fulcrum. And that's how we're reintroduced to her in Rebels, the mysterious fulcrum. And it was really nice touch to see her get that title in this book and see the genesis of that program within the rebellion.
Oh, for sure. And, like you said, it really does open up the door for future novels. I would really like to see a comic series with Ahsoka. I think it's really ripe for, either a mini series or ongoing. It could be anything, but, just following her parallel to what's going on in Rebels would be fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I would buy anything at this point with her name attached to it. If they wanted to do an entire series, animated series, if the next animated series was about Ahsoka and helping string together the rebellion, I'd be totally in for that. If like you said, it's an ongoing comic book series, great. If it's a mini series, a little less great, but I'm on board. But I do hope that this. I hope that E.K. Johnston gets a crack at a part 2 and 3 in this storyline that takes us through her development, not only as a character and a Force user, but as an agent within the rebellion. It'd be nice to see her connect more with Bail, to see if they ever share secrets with one another about Obi-Wan. And if you could drop in characters like Saw Gerrera, like Cassian Andor, who is also more or less a fulcrum agent. It would be nice to start stringing some of these major players together in ways that we haven't seen yet.
That'd be fantastic.
So what about some of the interludes in the book? These Star Wars books, between the Aftermath series and this book, becoming a little bit famous for these little side detours. And I think the Ahsoka novel had some really interesting ones, particularly about Obi-Wan. And we see Obi-Wan in his solitude on Tatooine. There's one interlude where he returns to the Lars homestead, and he's at Shmi's grave to apologize to Shmi for what's happened to Anakin and how badly that went. And that was a very poignant scene. Did that one resonate with you as much as I probably think it did?
I mean, it's one of those scenes where I didn't know I needed it until I read it. And I thought that was fantastic.
Yeah, a really great touch, which made me wonder, in A New Hope, whether we just don't see it or if Owen and Beru removed it. Where is Shmi's headstone in A New Hope? Did they scrap it because they don't want Luke asking questions about his family, about his past? Or did we just simply not see it?
I can't see them scrapping it because Luke knows his dad was a Jedi. Right?
Well, he thought his dad was a navigator on a spice freighter until he meets Obi-Wan.
Oh, well, right.
So I wonder, that's why I wonder if they took away the headstone. Just so that Luke wouldn't be asking all these probing questions about his grandmother and his past and my dad and this and that, and start putting together some of the pieces. And
right.
Just keep him dumb, right? Just don't let him ask anything. Or it's possible that the camera just never went to that spot and we don't see the headstone.
Yeah. I mean, the realistic answer is that Shmi wasn't really in Lucas's mind at that point. It's just kind of one of those things where prequels, kind of created the holes that we kind of have to fill with headcanon. But it would be interesting if they did something to address that, like they did the exhaust port in Rogue One.
Yeah, and one of the easy answers again is, well, they live on a desert planet. Winds over time will shift and blow things around, and then the headstone could have just been buried.
Right. I mean, at that point, Luke is 19, 17, whatever. So, talking almost, 2 decades. So it very well could have, been weathered at that point. Yeah.
Yeah, and another neat interlude with Obi-Wan is where he first connects with Qui-Gon, which again is a big deal. We know that Yoda sent Obi-Wan off into his exile, but told him that he has training for him. So this picks up, whatever it is, a year or two after the events of Revenge of the Sith, and Obi-Wan finally connects with his master, who's one with the Force on the other side, and all he can hear his master saying to him is "Let go." So we know that Obi-Wan is harboring all that guilt, keeping it all to himself about what happened to Anakin, what happened with his descent to evil, and he hears Qui-Gon say "Let go." And I thought that was, again, a fantastic interlude. And just keeping Obi-Wan's spark alive while we wait to see him again in Rebels, and hopefully one day in an actual movie.
Right. Just I like that, planting the seeds. Hopefully, yeah, like I said, maybe a hint at what we're going to see, culminate in Rebels. Because we don't know. I mean, I would love for Ahsoka to show up. I hope we finally get the answer as to what went on after her battle with Vader.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know if
there's that series
it.
of images that Dave Filoni had drawn up, right? Where I think it's a 12-part series of really, I don't want to say abstract, but very mysterious images that Dave Filoni had sketched out, and they're all over the web if you want to see them. And it kind of outlines Ahsoka's journey once she descends into that temple. And good luck making it out. Good luck to you in trying to figure out what happened. But within those images, I suppose there's some kind of answer.
I'm like seeing if I could find it quick. What would I search for?
Yeah, it's a tough Google search.
Filoni Ahsoka Tano art, like red and black. No. Either way, I'll find it. But
yeah, if I find the link, I'll send it over to you. So anyway, before we wrap up, we haven't really spoken about any of the other characters. Any character in this book, or characters, jump out at you as interesting and worthy of exploring a bit more?
I think overall, one of my comments on the book is, as far as the secondary characters went, I wasn't too enthralled by them. But I did like seeing the relationships with Ahsoka, and the young girls. There was the Force sensitive girl. I'm totally blanking on her name.
Right. Yeah. On the other planet, right? There was the girl that would move things around.
Right. And that whole aspect of it, I thought was very intriguing because, to be someone who's so different from everybody else and have no idea, to be so far removed from the Jedi Order, and, the whole idea of being a young child and not really knowing what's going on with you, and you have these special, it almost felt very X-Men to me.
Yeah, it did.
And I really like that.
And well, that's why the sixth Inquisitor, or the sixth brother, was after.
Right.
Before he got diverted to get onto Ahsoka's trail, he was on that planet. Presumably, I think he was there to investigate rumors of a Force-sensitive child. And of course, we remember in the Clone Wars where the Empire was stealing Force-sensitive children to their own ends, and they were still doing so even in Rebels.
Right.
And the Inquisitor had gotten really close to nabbing this little girl before he gets diverted to focus his attention on Ahsoka. And then later on in the book, Ahsoka reconnects with this young girl and realizes that, oh my God, like you can imagine the feelings of the need for Ahsoka to protect this girl while at the same time not really feed her any extra information about what she is and who she is. It was just like, what a bad position to be in. I mean, in the end, I think she told the girl's father that she's special, and just keep an eye on her. But what else can she do, right?
Right, without calling any more attention to it.
Because the Jedi were branded as traitors within the galaxy, and most people had kind of bought into that. The Jedi, these are terrible people. So she wasn't going to tell the father that, hey, your little girl's a potential Jedi. Well, he'd probably freak out. So I think she left it very vague and just said, just keep an eye on this one. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. That was a relevant part of the book. And you're right. There's 2 sisters on Raeda, which I think are the only other 2 notable secondary characters in this book. There was Kaden and her younger sister, whose name escapes me. But that's it. I mean, as far as notable new characters in the book, not named Bail Organa or the Inquisitor, that's it. It was a very small, intimate book I found.
Right, really focused on Ahsoka mostly.
Absolutely.
Which I feel like for the nature of a YA novel, was good. I think. It just kept it streamlined, and it really made, I think, the whole story a little more poignant, just from her perspective, rather than having it too, because it wasn't an epic story, with a bunch of side characters. It wasn't a Rogue One, where you had all these characters. It was really, like you said, very intimate. And I think for Ahsoka fans, that was a plus. And for people, I think, just wanting to learn more about the character, I think it's very good. I wouldn't say jumping off point, but supplementary to Clone Wars and Rebels. Yeah,
again, it's how the structure of the book, and like you would have used a perfect word, streamlined. It's a perfect part 1 novel, and I think with part 2s and 3s, there's opportunity to get a little bit deeper and wider as far as characters and epicness, quote unquote. But yeah. Now, I thought the relationship between Ahsoka and Kaden, it was really endearing, because you could tell the Kaden character had some pretty strong feelings for Ahsoka, the tingly type of feelings, and you saw Ahsoka's compassion, because Ahsoka's just not there, I guess.
Right.
That's just not her thing at this point in her life, where she's like, that's how you feel about me. Yeah. It was really cute. It was I thought E.K. Johnston handled it really, really well. And I thought it was also really cute how her younger sister, Caden's younger sister, kept teasing her about it gently. I thought that was all really cute.
Definitely something new for Star Wars, having a relationship like that, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah,
well, not new completely, but very so. And it being in a YA novel, which is great. And just having it part of a main character's experience, which I thought was good.
Yeah, not having the person treated like a pariah,
Yeah,
I thought it was really well handled. I don't know if we'll see Kaden again, but part of me kind of hopes we do. I mean, there's no reason to see her again.
Mm-hmm.
Wait a minute. Was she brought in to the rebellion as well at the end?
Mm-hmm.
I want to say she was, along with her sister.
I don't remember.
Again,
this is why
preparation is important. Well, maybe somebody will correct us. But I want to say that Kaden and her sister were both brought into the fold. So, yeah, if that's the case, then we definitely will see Kaden again. And I'll be happy to see her again. But anyway, I think that'll do it for the Ahsoka novel. I was happy with it. At first, a little bit saddened that there wasn't a little bit more rip-roaring action adventure type stuff. But really happy with the character dive into Ahsoka and getting much more close to the character. Again, like I said off the top, I love Ahsoka, and I'll take whatever we can get of her. And I hope we do get a lot more. This is one of my favorite novels in the new canon so far. Not quite in the top 3, just because it doesn't handle with enough serious matter, but I thought it was a solid start to a character that I just adore.
Exactly. I mean, it's definitely a bright star in the new canon. It's not. I definitely would recommend it as well.
And it's a quick read too. This is not going to be one of these books that takes you forever to get through. It's a fast read. It's a tight story, and you get right inside Ahsoka's mind.
And I have to say, though, if for anyone who wants to check out the audio book, it is narrated by Ashley Eckstein.
Which is a huge plus.
Which is huge. So you feel like you're listening to Ahsoka.
Yeah, you get like, I forget the length of the book. I want to say it's 8 or 9 hours. You get 8 or 9 hours of Ahsoka. Ashley Eckstein Ahsoka. Like, what's better than that?
Yeah, and I really feel like that did add like an extra layer to it, because one, the productions are always so great on these books, if you do the audio, but having the actual voice actor, it really felt tied to the shows, and it actually felt more like a radio drama. So it added an extra layer of enjoyment for me, I'd say.
Yeah, I think that that's an underrated point. It wouldn't have felt right. I mean, you know what? I think we wouldn't have complained if it was not Ashley Eckstein, but because it was, it just feels so perfect. So yeah, I do recommend this book. Anybody who liked the Ahsoka character really needs to pick this up and give it a shot if you haven't already. And Steve, I think that'll do, man.
And we hit a solid hour. We didn't go too long. I know that's something we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, we finally kept our motors shut right on the right number. So, yay for us. But Steve, until we catch up again next time, why don't you tell the people where they can find you on Twitter?
On Twitter, you can find me at GioAngoFett. GIOANGO Fett. Like a song.
Awesome. So yeah, give Steve a follow there. Love talking Star Wars on the whole Twitter machine. And I'm at Tumbling Saber. Come check us out and check out the Star Wars Commonwealth Network on the web and on Twitter and Facebook, all that good stuff. And we'll be back in a couple days with the 65th episode of the Tumbling Saber podcast. So we wish you a great weekend, and until then, bye for now. You've been listening to Journals of the Whilling from the Tumbling Saber team, a member of the Star Wars Commonwealth Podcast Network. Learn more about the network and its members at StarWarsCommonwealth.com.